We all get sucked into those inheritance shows, right? You know, the ones, where families are like fighting over fortunes and all that. But today, we're going to try to like help you avoid that. We're taking a deep dive into estate planning with Tina Jin's book, Don't Let Your Will Be a Family Mystery Thriller. We're going to uncover the secrets to like making this whole inheritance thing go smoothly. And we'll learn from some cautionary tales. Some of them, I promise you, are stranger than fiction.
It's kind of wild how we tend to think estate planning is just for like rich people.
Yeah.
But Tina Gin's book shows us, like really clearly, that estate planning is for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of how much money you have.
That's a really good point. It's easy to think that those dramatic stories we hear, about celebrity estates and stuff are like, well, that won't happen to me.
Right.
But maybe those are just the cases that like, make it to the news and stuff.
Exactly. Even a like simple estate can get really complicated without proper planning.
Okay, so let's get into some of these celebrity estate cases. You mentioned that even with like the best legal teams, things can still go wrong. What are some that come to mind?
Well, Aretha Franklin.
The Queen of Soul.
Yes. She passed away, sadly, without a properly executed will. She had all these handwritten documents, and one was even found in a couch cushion.
No.
Yeah, tucked away. This led to, like, years of legal battles and family disputes. It's interesting because a lot of people think a handwritten will is enough, but, like, in most states, you need specific requirements for it to be, legally valid. You need witnesses when you sign it and things like that.
Wow. That's a good reminder that a will isn't just like, scribbling down what you want. It's a legal document.
Yeah.
And I imagine finding it in the couch cushion is probably not a good sign. What about some other celebrity situations?
Well, Prince, he didn't have a will at all when he died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was really complicated to figure out, who should get his stuff, and it took 6 years and cost millions of dollars in legal fees.
6 years. That's incredible. So you don't even have to have like, a massive estate like Prince for it to be a huge burden on your family.
Right. And it's not just the money. It's also, like, emotionally draining for everyone involved.
Mm.
Years of this back and forth can, like, really hurt relationships and, create resentment.
It's like those inheritance fights we see in movies, but like in real life.
Yeah. And it can even affect people beyond the family. James Brown, for example,
Sure.
he wanted his estate to fund scholarships for, kids who needed it. But
Yeah.
he didn't, like, really spell it out clearly in a way that made sense legally. So his estate got caught up in a 15-year court battle.
15 years.
Yeah. And it ended up hurting the cause he cared about.
So even if you have good intentions, if you don't like make things official and legal, things can go wrong. It seems like there's this idea that a will is just like a simple thing, but maybe it's not.
Right. There's this, like, myth of the simple will that traps people. Even situations that seem straightforward can get really complicated, if there are blended families or digital assets or property in different states.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm starting to see how estate planning is way more than just writing down who gets what. Are there any other common things people should look out for?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A really common mistake is forgetting about non-probate assets. These are things like life insurance policies and retirement accounts. These are handled separately from a will.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So
cool.
even if I have a will, some of my stuff might not be covered by it. How do those beneficiary things work?
Okay, so let's say you've got a life insurance policy
Mm.
and you name your spouse as the beneficiary. Even if your will says to split everything equally between your kids, that insurance money would go straight to your spouse. Like, it bypasses the will.
Oh, I see. So it's really important to like coordinate all of that.
Exactly. Another thing people often overlook is the executor.
Oh, yeah. That's the person who carries out the will, right? What should we know about picking the right person for that?
Yeah. The executors, like the captain of the estate ship, they manage everything, pay any debts, and make sure the inheritance is distributed according to the will. So you need someone responsible, organized, and who can deal with, like, family dynamics and stuff.
It's not just about trusting them. You got to make sure they can handle it.
Exactly. And it might seem obvious, but it's super important to remember verbal promises. Like,
Yeah.
they don't mean much legally.
Yeah, that reminds me of Marlon Brando. He made all these promises to, like, people who worked for him and friends.
Yeah.
But it wasn't in writing, so they weren't honored after he died.
Right. That's why it's so important to
Yep.
get everything in writing. If you want something specific to happen, put it in your will or other legal documents.
No more napkins with scribbled notes, huh?
Nope. It seems like getting advice from an estate attorney is a really important step.
Yeah.
They can guide you through all the complexities and make sure everything is, legally sound.
Well, we've just scratched the surface of estate planning, but before we get into some of the nitty-gritty, why don't we take a break from all the seriousness and have a little fun with some humorous inheritance stories? I promise you, even in this world of wills and estates, there are some really quirky tales.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of estate planning.
We've just explored some pretty serious celebrity estate situations and how important it is to get things right when it comes to like wills and those, what were they called, non-probate assets.
Yes.
But now, let's have a little fun, right?
Yes.
Let's look at the lighter side of inheritances with a few quirky stories from Tina Jin's book.
Yeah, these stories give us a glimpse into the unexpected, sometimes even funny side of estate planning. And they remind us that people's wishes can be really diverse, just like, their lives were.
All right, I'm ready for a good laugh. What's the first story that stood out to you?
Well, there's this one about a woman who inherited a huge mansion. But there was this one specific clause in the will, a locked trunk in the attic that she was never supposed to open.
Oh.
Of course, she couldn't resist, right? So she finally unlocks the trunk, and all she finds are old shoes.
Old shoes, that's it. No, like, hidden treasure or family secrets.
Just old shoes. Tina Ginn calls this the haunted house clause. It's a great example of how people like to add a little mystery to their estate plans.
I guess some people just love a little drama. What other peculiar stories did you find?
Oh, this one's good. A man who left his whole fortune to his pet parrot. And not only that, he left really detailed instructions for the parrot's care, like specific food and a daily routine.
Wow, that's one pampered parrot. Some people really treat their pets like family, huh?
They do.
Yeah.
And this story shows us how someone's passions can shape their estate plans.
Okay, so we've had some good laughs.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the practical side of things. Tina Jin's book has some really great advice on creating a solid estate plan. What are some of her key recommendations?
One of the most important things she says is to treat estate planning as an ongoing process, not just a one-time thing.
So it's not just about writing a will and then forgetting about it.
Right. Because life is always changing, your estate plan needs to change with it.
Makes sense, like getting your car's oil checked regularly.
Exactly. Big life events, marriage, divorce, having kids, even if your financial situation changes a lot, you should review and update your estate plan.
Makes sense. What else?
Another big one is to talk to your loved ones about your wishes. Don't just have a will, have open and honest conversations about what you want to happen.
So no surprise reveals at the will reading.
Exactly. Being open and transparent helps prevent misunderstandings and arguments later on. Tina Jin really emphasizes talking to your family. Explain why you're making certain decisions. Let them ask questions.
It's like diffusing a bomb before it explodes.
Right. But talking openly, you can help make sure your estate plan is understood and respected. And that helps keep the family harmony.
So we've talked about having a will and keeping it up to date. But what about those of us who feel overwhelmed by the whole thing? Where do we even start?
Tina Ginn actually addresses that in her book. She gives a step-by-step guide for creating a good estate plan. And the first step is to take stock of your assets.
So like write down everything you own. Bank accounts, property, even like personal stuff and investments.
Yep, all of it. Once you know what you have, you can start thinking about how you want to divide it up. Who are your beneficiaries? What are their needs?
I can see how this could get complicated, especially if you have a blended family or if you want specific things to go to specific people.
That's where an estate attorney can be really helpful. They can guide you through those tricky situations and make sure everything's legal.
Okay, so it's like having an expert to make sure you don't mess things up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to those non-probate assets for a minute. We talked about them briefly, but I think we should dig a little deeper.
Okay, yeah. What are some examples of those and why are they so important?
Sure. Common ones are things like life insurance policies, those retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs, and property that's jointly owned. These assets, they have their own beneficiaries. So when you die, they go directly to those people, regardless of what your will says.
Oh, wow. So even if my will says to split everything between my kids, if I have a life insurance policy that names my spouse as the beneficiary, they'll get that money anyway.
Exactly. It's really important to review those beneficiary designations every so often, especially after big life changes like getting married, divorced, or having a child. Otherwise, things might not go the way you planned.
Yeah, a small mistake could have a huge impact later on.
Absolutely. And while we're talking about things people forget, another area that often gets overlooked is incapacity planning.
Incapacity planning, isn't that something you only worry about when you're older?
Not really. Incapacity can happen to anyone at any age,
Yeah.
because of an accident or an illness. It's all about making sure your wishes are followed and that someone you trust can handle things if you can't.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it that way. What are some of the important parts of incapacity planning?
One of the most important is a durable power of attorney for finances. It's a legal document that lets you choose someone to manage your money if you become incapacitated.
So, like, they can step in and handle things if you can't.
Right. And there's also a durable power of attorney for healthcare that lets you choose someone to make medical decisions for you.
This is all making sense, but it's a lot to think about. It seems like estate planning is way more than just writing a will.
It is. And now with technology, we also have to think about digital assets.
Digital assets, what are those?
It's all your stuff online. Social media accounts, email, online banking, digital photos, even cryptocurrency.
Oh, wow. So it's not just physical things anymore.
Nope. And if you don't have clear instructions for what to do with these digital assets, they can be lost, someone might not be able to access them, or they could even end up in the wrong hands.
So it's like you need a digital will, too.
Right. And as our lives move more and more online, managing those digital assets is becoming a really important part of estate planning.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today. From the basics of having a will to those often forgotten things like incapacity planning and digital assets. Is there anything else you want our listeners to remember?
We've covered a lot in our deep dive into estate planning. Wills, non-probate assets, even those things people don't always think about, like incapacity planning and digital assets. This look into Tina Jin's book has really opened my eyes. I feel like I'm finally getting a handle on how complex this all is and how important it is to, take it seriously.
Yeah, me too. It seems like Tina Jin's book is really good at making this whole thing less mysterious and helps people understand how to, like, take charge of their own legacy.
Absolutely. And, one thing that really stuck out to me is how much she emphasizes talking openly with your loved ones.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah, it seems like being transparent and talking things through is really important to avoid those misunderstandings and arguments later on. She talks about, like, having your family involved in the conversation. Explain why you're making certain choices and, address any concerns they have. It's all about making sure everyone understands and respects your wishes, which can really help keep things peaceful, especially during a tough time.
Yeah. It's like that saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly. And as we wrap up our deep dive, I wanted to mention some of the resources Tina Ginn provides. It can make this whole estate planning thing a little easier.
Oh, yeah, please. I know this can feel overwhelming for some people, so any extra help is great. What does she offer?
Well, besides her book, Don't Let Your Will Be a Family Mystery Thriller, she also has this podcast. It's called The Will Wars, Avoiding Estate Nightmares Before They Happen. It's a really good way to get those quick tips and insights, on the go.
Oh, that's perfect for people who like listening instead of reading. What kind of stuff does she talk about in the podcast?
All sorts of things. The basics like wills and trusts, but also more specific topics like digital assets and planning for blended families. She even has experts on the show, like estate attorneys and financial advisors, to give you different perspectives.
So it's like having a personal estate planning expert right there in your pocket.
Exactly. And if you're looking for something even more hands-on, she has a website with templates, checklists, even bundles. These can help you, get organized, get all the important information together, even write some rough drafts of documents.
Wow, those tools and templates sound super helpful, especially if you're feeling kind of lost and don't know where to start.
Absolutely. But she always reminds people to talk to an estate attorney. Like, her book and website are great resources, but an attorney can give you personalized advice, for your specific situation.
It's like having a guide to help you through the confusing parts and make sure you're doing everything right, legally speaking.
Exactly. They can help you make good decisions, avoid mistakes, and create a plan that really reflects what you want and protects your family.
Well, I think we've pretty much covered everything there is to know about estate planning. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Just remember, estate planning isn't just about protecting your stuff. It's about preserving what you've built, your legacy, and making sure your wishes are followed. It's a way to give yourself and your loved ones some peace of mind and prevent conflicts in the future.
I love that. It's not just about the legal stuff. It's about taking care of everyone you love.
Right. And don't forget, estate planning isn't something you do once and forget about. You need to review and update your documents every so often, especially if something big happens in your life. That way, your plan always reflects what you want.
Like a living document. Right. It changes as your life changes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for help. There's so many resources out there, like Tina Ginn's book, her podcast, or website, and of course, estate attorneys who can offer expert advice.
So listeners, take control of your legacy. Start talking to your loved ones, gather information, and if you need to, get some guidance. It's an investment in your future and the future of everyone you care about.
I hope our deep dive has given you the knowledge and confidence to start your own estate planning journey.
Until next time, may your estate plans be crystal clear, your wishes followed, and your legacy a source of peace and happiness for generations to come.